of mind, this filter has to line up. You can see I put a black marker on it to make sure where the center of the thing was. It looks like actually it's moved a little bit. Maybe just a squeak. This right here. Oops, too far. There. Now this is my filter. It's just a small screen. Now mine's designed that filter, this piece here, was machined to let that filter slip in there and sat. Some of these have C-clamps here that hold that filter in place. A C-clamp at the top and one at the bottom. Mine's not designed that way. Mine, the casing itself, holds the filter. So, this hole and that filter, I know I put that mark right in the center of where the filter is, have to line up with this hole, which has to line up with this edging, which lines up with the mark I put before I took it apart. They all have to line up, and if they don't, it won't work. That's all there is to it. So now, what I'm going to do now, you do not want to put, so the instructions come, here's the instructions it comes with, and it says use Loctite 542, which I did. It's red. Anyway, if you try and put Loctite on this, oh, this is the gasket. It's actually a piece of tin, I think. It sounds like tin. Anyway, one of the things they do say in the instruction is don't put the gasket sealer over the tiny pinhole on this. This thing has a very tiny pinhole. If I turn on this light, you can see it here. So there's a tiny pinhole, and that has to line up with that hole, right? Let's see if I can get this. That hole right there. These are the mounting screws to mount it to the car. These are to hold the halves together. There's 6 of those. But that right there. So if you put your gasket goo on here, you can't help but plug up that hole. So do not put your gasket goo on here. Put it on here. This hole's big, not like a pinhole, and so you stand less of a chance of plugging up that pinhole. Put the gasket on your finger and make a smooth layer, very light layer of gasket goo. Then to ensure this hits on there, if I was you, I would thread a couple of the original bolts through this like this. Line them up with the hole like this. Make sure that that pinhole is where it should. And this cutout is where that cutout is, right there. And then let it slide down the bolts. And that way you don't accidentally rub your pinhole over your gasket goo. Once you have that glued down there, now you're ready to mate it to this thing. So what you do is you once again put gasket goo on here, a thin layer, not much around that little pinhole, right there, not much, right there. Put it on there. And then, since the gasket's stuck to there, I would flip this over like this, and I would once again put a couple of bolts through here like this to help me line it up, get it started, and I would carefully set this in. And this has to go into there. Do it very carefully and slowly. And when you're done, it should pop in, because when this O-ring slips into there, it pops in. Oh, put a little oil in there too. Oil on this and oil in there to help it slip in. Full synthetic oil, just a very light trace of it. Anyway, it just pops in. When you're done, the thing shouldn't fit on because these little springs hold it up, so it should just be lightly. And you can make sure you got it right by just squeezing around and making sure that everything is sitting just a little off. And then you can start putting in your 6 screws. By the way, these screws, to get them off, are hard. In the case of mine, they were on there for 45 years, so yeah. I used an impact screwdriver. I don't know if you ever used one of these. I bought mine at Harbor Freight. I don't remember how much it was, but what you do is you whack this with a hammer, and when you do, it just slightly turns the screw a little bit. And it's a good way to get screws that are stuck on off. So I had to use that. You can tell that I had to clean the dickens out of this. It had to be perfect. So anyway, that's my notes. Maybe it'll help you and maybe it won't. Oh, these things, by the way, it's a cap. The cap fits on the spring. And below the spring is a washer. So it's a washer, a spring, and then the cap. And that's how it goes. So when you're all done, we have it all together, let it sit for 24 hours and that glue's harden up. But the only way you're going to know if it leaks is you have to put it all together. You don't have to read the engine up though, but you have to put in the intake line, the return line, and you have to, of course, put on all these fuel lines on the top. If you leave anyone off and you turn on the fuel pump, it just squirts fuel everywhere. So you got to put them all on. And you got to put it on the motor because this thing has to be in place. So there has to be something holding it. So you basically have to install it all the way, but you can turn on the key and see if it's leaking. But since this is mounted, if it's leaking, you can't see where. You'll just see that it's wet again back here. So I don't know what else to tell you. I haven't got this working yet, but I'm hoping this time it'll do it. Good luck.